But yeah, man, tell us about growing up in Inglewood. Like, what about growing up in Inglewood still sticks with you today in your day to day?
Man, Inglewood, it's funny because, I was born and raised like right across the street from the Forum. Like my
That's
dad
wild.
worked at the Forum. He
Yeah.
worked at the casino that got tore down, and now it's SoFi.
Yeah.
But also, I played Little League like right around the corner from the Forum as well. And I think like when I think about Inglewood, I think about playing baseball.
Yeah.
Because my Little League was very special and very family oriented, where like you can come to this small park and you would know everybody's parents, and it just had this like community feel. Every year we used to have this thing called Family Fun Day, where every team kind of had their own little picnic area, and it was like music playing, DJs, water guns, super soaker. You know what I'm saying? It was just like the whole nine as far as like community and what you would want out of community, and that's where I grew up. And I think Inglewood specifically is somewhat like middle class, a lot of like working families
Blue
that
collar.
provide. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I felt safe. Like Inglewood felt safe to me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I always lived on the borderline of things, right?
What do you mean?
Like, for example, like I lived in Inglewood off of like Eucalyptus in Hillsdale. Like if you from Inglewood, you know where that is. But like across the street is where everything went down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a theme of like where I grew up. It was like I was always in the safe place, but I could like see what was happening. You know what I'm saying? And every now and then I would dip my toe into that, but I had the luxury of being able to go across the street home. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of what allowed me to have this storytelling perspective, because it's almost like Nas like saying he was looking out the project window.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the project window, but I could see.
I could see what was happening from your vantage point.
And then also even living in Inglewood, like my family, my dad grew up in like hardcore South Central, like 61st and Broadway. Wow. That's just like the center of South Central down there. And we would always go visit my grandmother and my other cousins that lived over there. So that journey from Inglewood to South Central, going down Florence and seeing just all of LA on one car drive just kind of just opened my mind up to like everything that LA had to offer, good or bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I think for me, ultimately, Inglewood just meant safety. Like Inglewood just felt safe.
Yeah, it sounds like family and safety those are like two big important themes. It sounds like for you. Tell me, what's the relationship like with your dad? Because it sounds like y'all have like a pretty like that's a bond that you're speaking pretty highly of.
Yeah, I think it's a dope relationship, man. I think at an early age, my dad took me under his wing and kind of took me everywhere with him. So I got exposed to all the things that he was into, which just so happened to be things like, old school cars and jazz music and, and just like driving around LA. Like, I don't know, I know that's like a very like specific thing, but
it is something about like seeing like a city and seeing a neighborhood with like your father.
Yeah,
and just the memory of being in the car and like the music that would play,
100%. I mean, even in House Party, like when you see the opening credits and you see like the camera come from the Hollywood sign down and you see the car driving through the hood, like that's my dad in the car. Like I put him in the car because he used to play that song, West Coast Pop Lock, driving through South Central, and like that's kind of, you know what I mean? I think, a lot of there's the cliche of like dads always telling you about like back in my day, but like I love that, you know what I mean? Like I remember being young, and instead of doing like a bedtime story, I would ask my dad to like tell me a story about back in the day, or like let me look at your yearbook, and I was obsessed with like how things were, and you know what I mean? And he was also a popular person, or he still is a popular person.
And so he's very outgoing. He knows a lot of people.
So when we driving down the street, like it's 7 people like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? And I think like that, it just taught me like when I think about, hanging with my dad, I just think about, someone who is friends with a lot of people and has a lot of like compassion for humanity as a whole.
Did you ever, with your dad, did you pick up that trait? You felt like the super social, like stop and talk to people, or did you do the opposite?
Well, it's funny because I didn't know my dad when he was like, a teenager or like a young adult. So like, I don't really know like how he became this person. And I think sometimes, because I'm not really that social, right? But if you ask my wife or like anybody I'm with, they say, oh, you know everybody, right? And so I think it's interesting because, you know, I feel like sometimes I'm not that cool, or I'm not like the person I think I am, but I'm driving down the street and I see 8 people that I know.
And that you actually know.
Yeah, and they want to say what's up. And it's like, okay, like I am who I think I am, you know what I'm saying? And so that's, you know, something that me and my pops share for sure.
Yeah. There was a story about you and your pops that kind of took us a little bit into your creative process, where you said, you know, he would tell these stories and you would kind of be able to like see like what the details of that story. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, my dad got stories for days, man, but I think, you know, he made everything that we did an adventure, right? Like, for example, going from Inglewood to South Central, like there's this house on Gage, and it's called the Crazy House. Well, we called it the Crazy House, and it's just like this 4-story house in the middle of the hood that has like the craziest architecture ever. It's like if you told like a 5-year-old kid to like draw a crazy house, and they just drew a house with like crazy windows and used every crayon color to color each window.
Oh, it's like that. It's got like all these different colors and stuff.
It looks like okay. I'm sure Coop would probably be able to break it down
yeah.
on some hood mid-century shit, but it's like, but I remember driving past that house, and like whenever we went to my grandmother's house, I would ask him like, can we pass the Crazy House? And it was like an adventure to go see the Crazy House. Yeah. And so I think like he always found ways to like spark my imagination. You know what I'm saying? Even down to like the music he would play, right? Like there's a artist by the name of Najee who's like a saxophone player, right? And like he would play this song that just sounds like some like, you know, nice colorful jazz music, but he was like, you know, back in the day, this is what the gangsters used to listen to. So like all the dudes in the lowriders, all the Crips, when they would be, you know, rolling down the street, they would be listening to this. Yeah. And so that automatically kind of engaged my imagination and allowed me to like see the past through a different light, not through like the typical lens, but knowing like the real, you know, what was really happening. You know what I mean? So that kind of inspired me to think about other things like, what were these other people doing? What was the real music? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's like my dad just kind of taught me to like look at the world and like in detail and like find the real, you know, truth behind some of these moments. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the great thing about that is like you get these contexts that you would never have otherwise, right? It's like, that's the thing I loved about like hanging with my dad, would just be riding in the car, you know, and to some of the points you said, like just being able to like his association with other people, I'd be like, I'm not really that social. But then as I start to get older, I'm like, yo, I'm kind of doing a lot of these same things. And then like, you know, with the music and with the cars, and you start to have these similar references. It's weird, but you don't think about that.
Yeah, it's like you thought your dad was cool, and you don't think you're that cool.
Yeah,
so maybe like, you are.
Yeah, you put dad up here. You know what I mean? Like he just, you know, he's up there. They're like superheroes, but then you're like, oh, they're also human.
For sure. For sure.
You know, so I know you got 4 of your top favorite movies, right? I think you said it was Boys in the Hood, Nutty Professor, Paid in Full, and Sister Act 2. Sister Act 2's on mine as well.
Actually, I feel like there's one that's not supposed to be on there.
Which one are we pulling out?
Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood is out.
And I'm replacing that with Forrest Gump. I don't think no one's ever done that before, but yeah, no. Forrest Gump is my favorite. What's the situation with Forrest Gump? I don't know, man. Like, I think like Forrest Gump might be my favorite movie of all time. Yeah. It just kind of, it checks every box for like what I like personally about art, right? It's like it's a period piece. Yeah. It's like the ultimate period piece, right? It takes you through different periods and it kind of gives you context to, you know, what's going on in the world at that time. It's funny. Yeah. It looks dope, and it's just an amazing story. And I just feel like, you know, I remember one year for Christmas I got like the Nutty Professor and Sister Act 2. Yeah. And I don't know how Forrest Gump snuck into that.
It was somewhere in this.
But it was like literally those 3 movies back to back to back to back. You know what I'm saying? Like those are the only tapes I had, and I just kind of, you know, I was fascinated. It's funny because I remember watching the news around the time that Forrest Gump came out. I was probably, I don't know how old I was, like 8 or something like that, probably younger. And I remember they were doing a story about like a dude, and they said like, I guess he had done a bunch of different things in life, and the news kind of like promoted him as like the real life Forrest Gump. And so I remember at that moment, I thought that was really Forrest Gump.
Thought that
so
was
I
Forrest?
thought Forrest Gump was like a true story.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize it was whatever until
made up,
way later. So it just kind of like, it's just dope, man. It's just kind of one of those films that just, like, I aspire to make films that cover as much ground as that film did. You know?
When you're watching films like that, what stands out to you? What's the lens that you're looking at that story?
I think it's the texture and the realness, the authenticity of the characters, right? It's like, it doesn't feel like it's acting. It just feels like you're just watching a documentary that's shot really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the ultimate challenge as a filmmaker, is to, like, you know, I pride myself on like understanding culture and like knowing what culture is. Yeah. But, and all the nuances within the culture, but it's another thing to be able to capture that and package it in a way that that resonates with everyone else the way it feels. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like you can, like, I know what streetwear and vintage and clothing and sneakers feel like the real world, but you know, when we watch those movies about sneakers, it just don't really.
It's so crazy.
Right. You know
I've still never seen a film that features the culture of streetwear and sneakers and felt like, oh, somebody there got it.
Well, the funny thing is, I think the closest thing we came to it was How to Make It in America on HBO, but that only lasted one season. Yeah. And it's just like, it was,
we didn't get,
you know what I'm saying?
We didn't get it. The story's unfinished.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's kind of been my goal as a filmmaker that I strive for every time, is to try to like get as close to reality as possible, you know, and sometimes, you know, I might get too specific and too real, but at the same time, like, that's like something I'm into and something that I like, that I kind of hang my hat on, is like, you know, being as real as possible.
How do you know if you got too real? Like, what's an example of you're like, I was too deep?
I think for me, it's just like obviously the last two films I made are like cult classics, but I think the one thing that people fail to remember about those films is that they were LA films, right? Like, they didn't talk about it in a house party, but like that was. But it was an LA neighborhood. You know, same thing for White Man Can't Jump. Like, they didn't. I don't think they ever said Venice Beach, but like you just knew it was Venice Beach. And so I think for me, being somebody from LA, I was like, we gonna redo these, and we gonna make sure it's
feel
LA,
you like
because,
this time.
because that also helps the story. That's what makes the story. That's what gives the story legs. Like, only in LA could you be in the hood and live 20 minutes away from LeBron and like want to like be famous and throw a party, because it's possible. Right. You know, only in LA could you be in Venice Beach and then go to Watts and then play these games. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so I wanted to lean into that. And so there's certain things where it's like, oh, it has to be at this location because this is like the real authentic LA. But then, like, you know, you go to New York and they're just like, I don't know what that is. You know what I'm saying? But I think, you know, another thing as a filmmaker that I'm learning and that I strive to do is be selfish as possible, as selfish as possible.
How so?
You know, I think you look at, you know, directors like Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, Scorsese, like, they're all super selfish, right? Like, Spike is like, yo, we're gonna film this movie called Crooklyn, called, you know, Do the Right Thing. It's gonna be on this street. We're gonna use all this slang. And I feel like, you know, it's very specific to New York, but at the same time, being somebody that's from LA, it's like we look at that and we now know what it's like to be in New York.
Yeah, you can have an appreciation for it because you feel like Spike brought you front and center to his hood.
He's teaching us, he's bringing us into his world. And so I think like that's what I strive to do with these last two films, is like, let me bring you into like this LA world. Like, you may look at it and just think like, oh, these are just some like hood dudes that have these like random letters on their hoodie. And it's like, no, if you're from LA, you know that whenever these hood dudes try to start a clothing line, they go down to the alley, or they go to the garment district, and all they can afford is to get a blank hoodie, and they have some pre-made, you know, Letterman letters that they have to like come up, kind of create a clothing line with. You know what I mean? People like, I don't know if you know Desto Dub, who has like an awful lot of cough syrup. Wow. You know, that's a big brand out here, but like that's how he started. You know what I mean? And it's like those little stories and nuances, like, probably don't, probably don't translate to the broader audience, but it works for me, you know, and the people that I know. And so,
but I think it has the same effect, right? Like, it's the point of like, it's not necessarily you have to know every single detail of what you're sharing, but it's more so like, I'm bringing you into what this world is, and so you can start to learn it and discover it.
For sure, down to the music, to the way they talk, to like the way they interact with each other, the streets we film, like they all mean something. And so, and that's another thing too, is like, if I'm a filmmaker, like, who knows, like those might be the only movies that they allow me to make. At least like 10 years from now, I can look back and be like, yo, can you believe we shot at Lamert Park?
Yeah.
That's crazy. We got this, we got that. You know what I mean? Like, why not? Like, it's a golden opportunity to express myself.
I love that you said that, because it's like, you know, it's like, it's your shot, it's your opportunity. Why wouldn't you do it exactly the way that you have it here, right? You let things slide, it's gonna eat away at you. You're always gonna wanna know, like, how could I have done that? Like, I could have done that differently.
For sure, yeah. It's like I owe it to myself and, you know, the people that inspire me and help me grow into the artist I am to kind of reflect this world in an authentic way. And so that's the fun part for me, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Before you got into directing, you were producing, rapping. Like, what was that world like for you?
Man, I mean, my whole journey started with me just being like, you know, a curious, like, little nerd in the hood. Like, you know, I used to go to this after school program on like 90th and Western. And it was like one of those typical, like, keep the kids off the street type of programs. But, you know, I was in the computer lab all day. I was learning how to use the computer. I was learning how to. You
there coding?
It was before coding. It was like, I was just using Microsoft Paint or using Print Shop and things like that, and like creating, you know, even like when I was around 9, like I started like a little business where I was making flyers and banners for people's birthday parties, you know what I'm saying? And I just had a love for technology, and I was always curious about it. And so, you know, from watching behind the scenes on how music videos are made, or behind the scenes on how Pixar does animation, that always made me curious about the process. And so, you know, when it came to my love for music through my dad, I always like try to figure out, like, how do they make these beats? How do they do this?
How do they do it?
Yeah, and so I found out like at the time my favorite group was Little Brother. And I found out
shout out to Fontaine.
Yeah, man. And I found out that like Ninth Wonder used Fruity Loops.
Yeah.
And then I got a copy of Fruity Loops, you know what I'm saying? And I started making beats. And so, you know, I'm, you know, going around town in LA, you know, in all these different studios with these different rappers, whether it be like a Dom Kennedy or a Pac Div or, you know, Casey Veggies.
Casey Veggies, yeah.
And I'm like, you know, making beats and rapping, but at the same time, I'm the tech nerd, you know what I'm saying, that knows how to, like, you know, code their MySpace page and create a dope design, or like do a flyer for their show. Like I did Dom Kennedy's first album cover, you know what I mean? I met him, the crazy thing is, you want to get really nerdy, I met him on Nike Talk.
Wow.
And it just so happened that we lived in the same neighborhood, and he needed somebody for graphic design, and then I did the album cover.
That was a whole, that era was a whole space and a web. And, you know, it's crazy because I still know a lot of people that I met through Nike Talk.
For sure.
It's such the most random, crazy thing.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, like, you know, I was making music and I was just like really tapped into the artistry side, but there came a time where, like, this is like kind of towards the end of the blog era, so to speak, where it was like you had to get on these blogs, you had to like be in the mix, and it wasn't working for me. But at the same time, I had this other thing that I was doing on the side that I was getting a lot of attention for, which was the graphic design and like the coding and stuff.
That was more so because you saw, well, maybe perhaps other people saw, these artists saw like these services, and they were like, yo, can you do more of this?
Yeah, and I was like, I was able to be in these spaces that my music probably wouldn't allow me into, so to speak, or it wasn't as easy. And so, you know, it kind of turned to this one moment where, you know, me and my friend, we were like, yo, we need to start a business. We need to like really do this and make some bread off of it. Yeah. And so he got like a little Sony Rebel or a Canon Rebel, you know, XTI. And we got like, you know, a little Dell laptop. And then, you know, long story longer, somebody broke into my crib one day, stole all my equipment, stole my camera, stole my computer, and my mom was like, well, you know, we got renter's insurance.
Word.
So what kind of camera did you have? And so the crazy thing is, like, before she asked me about the renter's insurance thing, I randomly just so happened to be on set. Kanye West was filming I See You in Your Nightmares. It was a short film directed by Spike Jonze. Wow. I was an extra in that.
What?
Yeah, it was just me and a couple other rappers from LA. We were just extras there, and Spike Jonze was directing. I knew who he was, but didn't really know. And I remember he had a Canon camera, and he was filming the video, and I was like, yo, how the fuck are you filming a video with a DSLR? Like, how are you doing that? and he was like, "Oh, this is the new Canon 7D. You can do video." And I was like, "Oh shit, that's crazy."
Yeah.
And then literally my mom was like, "What kind of camera did you
What
have?"
are the chances, fam?
Yeah, man. And I was like, "Oh, I had the Canon 7D." You know what I'm saying? And so, we passed the, the statute of limitation. You know what I'm saying? But I managed to like get a camera, and so, instead of me, going to the studio trying to make beats and trying to, do whatever, I'm filming the homies, and I'm going to these open mics, and I'm meeting people like Anderson .Paak. As he's starting off, I'm filming Tyler the Creator, like in one of his first shows in LA, because I'm just trying to like,
you try to
experiment
figure out
with my camera.
Yeah, right.
And so that just kind of, one thing led to another, and then, I just started doing music videos.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But what was the price jump on these cameras?
I think the Canon was like 500, and then the 7D
was like a couple
it was
G's.
like 1,400 at the time, because it was like cheaper than the 5D.
Okay,
but
that's what it was.
The secret to the 7D is that it had 24 frames.
Wow.
The 5D didn't have 24 frames yet. It was still 30.
Still 30, yeah.
And so the 7D automatically had that film-like quality.
Film, yeah.
That texture.
Dude,
Yeah.
so you get into music videos, and then what starts to happen? Like, what do you immediately just like go hard into like trying to direct different videos? Like, how did that start to build up and percolate?
Well, so I was really good friends with the group Overdose out of LA, right? Like, that's who I was doing the most music with before I started rapping, before I started filming solely.
Yep.
It was just like me hanging out with them, playing my beats, playing them my songs, and just kind of sharing ideas.
Yeah, just community, yeah.
Yeah, so like they were kind of my guinea pigs when I got the camera. Like, let me just film these dudes that I'm with. Let's just go film a music video. You know what I mean? Let's spend, the next 14 days, 2 weeks, like filming one music video. Yeah. Each day we do a different scene, and by the time we get done with the video, it looks like we just spent like $1 million on this budget, but we're just like chilling every day doing something new.
Wow.
So
you were recording like every day, y'all were like
every day
filming or like, creating something.
Yeah, it was like, let's do a scene today. Let's just find something random to do. Yeah. And that would be one scene in the video that would be, 3 minutes long. And so I think ultimately like that's kind of where I got my name. I think like I started off like just like kind of doing it for fun, and then people were like, yo, who's doing these videos? Yeah. And at the time I didn't even have my my name yet, Calmatic, but it's a long story but how I got that name. But ultimately when I started my YouTube page, I needed a name, and I just typed in Calmatic as like a username, and then people started gravitating
referring to you as
that name.
Yeah. It's crazy because people still mention you as like your username.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like why I've stuck with it as well, is because it's like paying homage to like our generation of creators, right? It's like, we are from the internet era, and we do know each other by our usernames. Yeah. I got a homie that I don't even know if I know his real name, but I sometimes call him by his username. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's one of my good friends. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, man, it's just one of those things that just stuck, and it's a dope name.
Man, so it's crazy. I think that's so dope that you went into like directing, just like repetition, right? Like you're constantly in the lab figuring things out. And that would lead to some really dope and big projects. One in particular was the video you directed with Pharrell and Jay-Z, the Entrepreneur video.
Oh, yeah.
What did that video mean to you? What's the importance and significance of that video to you?
Man, that video is dope, man, because, it kind of came out of the blue. I had met Pharrell through the group Overdose that I was talking about. At one point, he was trying to sign him. And I remember him, saying like, yo, the music is dope, but who makes the videos? You know what I'm saying? And so we always like been in touch, and we were like, yo, we got to work on something one day. And so in the middle of the pandemic, I get a call from Pharrell, and it was just like, yo, we want to do this video where we're like capturing entrepreneurs from all over the world. And so, it kind of sent me on this journey to like find out who these entrepreneurs were. And I think that what made the video special to me is I realized that a lot of my peers were like some of the top entrepreneurs in the world. Yeah. And it just so happens that they're right here in my backyard. Yeah. You know what I mean? My best friend Trent Williams, like his family owns Honey Kettle Fried Chicken, and that's like they're like the top fried chicken place in America. So like, why not feature them? Yeah. You know what I mean? Or I know people like Trey at the Neighbor Skate Shop in Lamar Park. I don't know any other black skate shops. They're probably one of a handful, why not? You know what I'm saying? And so I think it kind of, you know, made me realize how special it is that, you know, that my peers are some of the most like influential people in the world, and I wanted to kind of put that on the biggest platform. You know,
I think that was so fire about it. It was like you have these massive stars in Pharrell and Jay-Z, and they're giving this platform to entrepreneurs, and like, you know, like it's not an easy thing. Like, you know, you can see sometimes it can be glossed over, but entrepreneurship, like, you know, it's a lot, especially for Black people. Like, you know, historically we've had more challenges than anyone trying to stand up businesses, right? And so to be able to lend that platform,
for sure,
that's got to feel super dope.
Yeah, and I think also there's people who I've seen their journey from the beginning. Like I remember when Tyler the Creator first started, and he's one of the most important entrepreneurs in American history. You know what I mean? Same thing with Issa Rae, who's also featured in the, you know what I mean? Like these are people that like grew up in the same, you know, 5-mile radius, and it's like, they're changing the world, and like I'm one of those people too. You know what I mean? That's kind of what that was a testament to, for sure.
What do you think about when you think of like your network being those people, and then how y'all are all like really elevating and pushing things? Like, do you like think like, oh, this is kind of weird, or you're like, yo,
no, to me it's like, it's interesting because, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts, right? And I remember listening to Combat Jack, who, you know, obviously he's like one of the best podcasts that ever existed, and he would tell these stories about growing up in New York and how, like, you know, Jay-Z, Q-Tip, and Busta Rhymes and DMX all went to the same high school. And I'm just like, what? Like, how is that possible? You know what I mean? Or like, you know, Boyz II Men, Questlove, Ari Lennox, like not Ari Lennox, the other Ari, whatever. It's like they went to the same high school in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? And it's like, how is that possible? But I think like I had to realize like that's just how it is. Like, you know, people have to live somewhere and go to these schools, and it just so happened that, you know, these people, you know, changed the world. Sometimes I have to remind myself that like we live in Los Angeles, California, United States world. Like it's just like, you know, if you're someone of some kind of influence here, you're probably pretty big. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you can be like the coolest, you know, skater in Los Angeles, you're probably top 10 in the world, in the country. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of puts a lot of stuff in perspective. And then even just thinking about, you know, the future of my career and thinking about the people that are around me, even me having this conversation with you, it's like, you know, we're doing this now, but it's like 20 years from now, we're going to be doing something crazy. It's going to be like, yo, you remember you interviewed?
You remember we did that?
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so I think like it all makes sense in the scheme of things, but it, you know, it is pretty cool. I can't lie. Like it's fun.
It's fun. I mean, like it's just, I mean, that's a good thing, right? Like it is fun. It's not, you're not doing it, you feel like, oh my God, like this is like, I don't know why I picked this path, right?
Yeah, no, it's dope. Like that's the best part, you know, to be honest,
Now, one thing that does come along with this, like being in LA, working in Hollywood, working in the music industry, it can come with its things, right? It can come with its stress, and it can come with a lot of those things. And as you've maneuvered, how have you navigated around, you know, moments where you can experience anxiety and frustration and things like that? How have you navigated that?
Man, this is interesting because, you know, I've seen a lot in this industry, right? I've worked with a lot of people. Even before I got into film, I was like, you know, working with that group Overdose, and I got to see like the music industry firsthand. And I know how things work. And I know, you know, the ups and downs of the industry. I've worked with everyone. I've done 2 movies with major studios. I've worked with Kendrick Lamar at the beginning of his career and at the height of his career. And I hate to say this, but I'm glad to say this, is that what I realize is like nothing matters. Like,
break that down.
When you, as a creative, when you're creating art, if you make the best art that you've ever made, or you make the worst art that you ever made, like the threshold of like how that affects your overall life is very minimal. You know what I'm saying? And I think as long as, you know, you and your family are safe and you're out of harm's way, then then nothing that you do is that detrimental to like what, you know, how you perceive yourself in this world.
Yeah.
And I think that's things, a lot of the anxieties that artists have is like there's been times where I've done music videos or commercials or whatever, and I'm like, damn, like I fucked that up. Like
you really thought it was
I'm
into
never
your career.
getting hired again. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, like I mean, obviously, like maybe I'm blessed or maybe I'm lucky, but from my experience, I realized that you always kind of live to see another day or to try again. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's part of being an artist is to like, it's a practice,
It's
right?
a practice.
It's not like even when it comes to making film, it's like there has to be so many things that go right for you to make something great. Like that things that are out of your control, right? And so it's like if it doesn't go your way, it's fine. You know what I mean? I bet you a lot of the films that we love, a lot of the art that we love are probably got made in like these horrible conditions if you ask the artist that created it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think, you know, I've kind of taken on this mindset that like, even if I do something amazing that changes the world, so to speak, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be who I am. I'm still going to be able to go home every day to my family. And that's all that really matters. And so that's what helps me get through those anxieties. You know, I think, you know, we built these stories and these obstacles that the industry has, but like, we don't really look at them like objectively, right? It's like, you know, when I think about, people talk about like the studio or even in advertising, right? They're like the client, you know what I mean? And it's like, when it comes to the studio is just like Steve and Colin. You know what I mean? Like literally, like those are
people.
Like those are like the two. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's probably more people behind the scenes that I don't know, but like it's not like this big, you know, this round table with all these people. You know what I'm saying? I think, you know, the more I've learned about the industry, the more that I've realized that it is just like a big, you know, playground for artists to just try things, and if they work, they work. That's great. That's amazing. But if they don't, hopefully you can, you know, have another day to try again.
Sure. Well, I find as creatives is like, I wish we compared more of our experience to being an athlete.
Man.
And the reason I say that is like, you know, when you're watching a basketball game, you know, like, how many basketball players do we know make every shot?
Bro,
you know?
Talking about baseball, it's like if you get a hit 3 out of 10 times, you're amazing.
You're
the
good.
Best hitter of all time. Like Tony Gwynn is batted like 320 or something. That means like every 10 at bats, he only got on base or hit the ball 3 times. You know what I'm saying? And like, if you equate that to like film or art, like that's not good. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? There's so many artists that I know who do art that I don't really, that's not for me.
Right.
But they're continuing to make their craft.
They got
and like,
someone that wants it.
It's someone out there there's something out there for everybody. And like, that's super important to understand. And like, it may not resonate with the people you want it to resonate with. And that's a whole nother conversation. But at the end of the day, your job as an artist is to just try things and hopefully it sticks with somebody.
Yeah, you can't like just try one thing and expect it to work. It's like it's like you said, it's a part of like evolution. Like you're constantly trying things, sharing things, different ways to communicate. It's not just like no one has ever discovered the singular right way to tell a story.
Yeah,
like
man.
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, man. And so I definitely got to find a way better way to like articulate my philosophy of it doesn't matter or nothing matters, but it's something that like it's a feeling that I get when I'm like, I look at the industry and I'm like, yo, like Kendrick just put out like a New York drill song where he's just like dancing around Europe and like chilling at Dodger Stadium. Like it's a dope song. It's not his best lyrical display, but that shit don't matter. No. Like he can do whatever he wants to do.
Wants.
Like no one cares. You know what I'm saying? And I think like people think that, you know, you only have one shot and all this kind of shit. And it's like, nah, especially in this day with all this content, like every day is a new day for you to like.
Literally, even in the same day.
Yeah, even the same day. You know what I'm saying? And like, I know, you know, it's different. Maybe it might be different if you're in front of the camera versus behind the camera, you know. But at the same time, I think there's so many outlets that artists can express themselves to hopefully get them back in those spaces where they can, you know, create for a big platform or a larger platform.
By the way, I think you got a book title in there.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I know, man. I've been trying to. I mean, it's definitely like I got to workshop it some more, but like, it's something that me and my homies talk about all the time, and it's just like we'll look at certain things like this movie bombed at the box office. Or, for example, like both my films are like super controversial because everyone's like, don't remake a film.
Yeah,
like,
everybody's got an
House
opinion
Party.
on what.
And it's
what
like
to do with
literally, you'll see one tweet. I search my name. And
You do?
all the time. I love it. And it's like you'll see a tweet that says like, I love White Man Can't Jump, unlike that House Party movie. And then I'll see people that say like, I loved House Party, unlike White Man Can't Jump. Or like, House Party was the greatest remake of all time.
Yeah.
White Man Can't Jump sucks. And then literally somebody say White Man Can't Jump is the greatest remake of So it's like, you can't really win. You know what I'm saying?
You can't. You never can win with opinions.
With opinions, you know what I'm saying? And to that point, everything is an opinion.
Everything is an opinion.
Everything, like life is an opinion.
It's not law. Like, I think somebody's opinion is not.
Everything is an opinion, dog. Like, literally every single thing that we do is an opinion. And I think once you realize that, then that kind of goes into that it doesn't matter territory, and you just do what the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
And you put your dad in the movie, you film in the neighborhoods you want to film in, and like you smile about it every time you watch it. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of what they say.
For some of the creatives that aren't quite there yet, how did you get to the point where you were, like comfortable with people's opinions? And comfortable may not be the right word, but it's more so like those opinions aren't stopping you from continuing to create. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because I think that's part of the process is like doing something, seeing those opinions, and then maybe thinking that it's over, but then something else comes like within the next couple of months, and you're like, oh, I'm back. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that those things that they were saying had zero effect on me and my career and my livelihood, and so I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if that happens, time after time after time, you slowly realize like this shit doesn't matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they can hate it all they want.
But I'm still getting it because my average must be nice.
Like, you know how many people don't like Drake?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like he's still the #1 artist of all time. Like,
So
like what can you do?
Facts are facts. You got to deal with it.
Like imagine if when he first started was like, oh, they don't like me because I was on Degrassi. I'ma stop. Like no, like you keep going and do you, and if they catch up, they don't. They whatever.
I think that's a good mentality to have because Drake is a great example. He does get that, but it's to your point. It's like it's either you're gonna stop because of them or you're just gonna keep doing your thing and like everybody has their lane.
For sure.
Right? Like everybody has their lane. Like you're not gonna try to do the same thing someone else is. So
and I think too, just as an artist, right? It's especially as a working artist, right? That's a separate thing than like just being an artist. Like it's my job to work. And if someone gives me an opportunity to work, I would be crazy for not taking it. You know what I mean? Even if it is something as, precious as the White Man Can't Jump IP or House Party. It's like, I was telling somebody, it's like comparing it to, being a sneaker designer or being an artist, and then all of a sudden, Jordan comes to you and is like, yo, here's a Jordan 1. Like, do you want to design your own version of this?
Yeah.
I'm like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, I do. Why wouldn't I?
Like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm gonna, make the laces orange. I'm like Virgil. I'm gonna cut the Nike sign off and then put it back on and put a bit. You know what I mean? Like you can like that's kind of how I approach those projects. Is like I'm an artist. This is how I would do it. Yeah. And this is my first shoot. Yeah. Like this is my first collaboration. Yeah. Like I think this is one piece of my journey, and then when I make my next shoot, that'll be my next part of my journey, and then ultimately I would have to make my own original shoot. You know what I'm saying? And so I think like that's where I'm at now, where it's like I've done the collaborations with artists, music video wise, and I've done these films with collaborations with these stories, these IPs. Yeah. And now it's kind of time for me to do my own thing and tell my own original stories.
I love the way that you compared filmmaking to sneaker collabs. Yeah. Where does that come from?
I mean, I'm just overall I'm like a student of like, I hate to say this word, but I have to say it. I'm a student of like hypebeast culture. The right way to say it is like streetwear, but I think like what's going on right now with fashion is a lot more advanced than like how streetwear started. Like now, when I say hypebeast, I'm thinking about the business side of it and the how corporate America has kind of entered the streetwear space, and I think that's something that we're all interested in. The same way NBA fans are obsessed with like stats and analytics and like and salary caps and all that kind of stuff. We're interested in like collaborations and all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm not someone that grew up with a lot of like money where I could buy all these sneakers, but I go on hype beats like 5 times a day. You know what I'm saying? And I know the culture, and I see how things work, and I'm able to follow these certain stories. And I love to like draw parallels with my career with other, you know, things that I know, whether it be like the music industry or like the film industry or the fashion industry. You know, I look at music and I'm like, all right, you know, House Party, that wasn't my Good Kid, Mad City. That was my Kendrick Lamar OD. You know what I'm saying? White Man Can't Jump wasn't my Pimp a Butterfly. That was my Section 80. You know what I'm saying? So like my next film, it's gonna be Good Kid, Mad City, and my second one's gonna be Pimp a Butterfly. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, kind of making a parallel with fashion is like, you know, you think about sneakers and just like, you know, I don't know, like the way they're designed and when people collaborate, and it's like, this is just their first time. Like, I'm sure they learned so much in this process. And who knows, like their next one might not be that good, but at least that's a step in the right direction. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of how I, you know, like to like compare things. It just helps me. You know.
No, I think it's dope. Like it shows like you're really tapped into that that world.
I'm like too tapped in sometimes. Where I'm like, damn, should I be like trying to do like fashion, but then I'm still doing film? And so I think that's what I'm trying to figure out as an artist, is like how I can incorporate all those things and, you know, be on some like Spike Lee shit. You know what I'm saying? And like really, you know, not just do it visually, but do it in all aspects of like culture and just like lifestyle in general.
I mean, you definitely sparked an idea in my head. Like I'm waiting to see you do that film where we're like, he finally captured the spirit of streetwear and sneaker culture, hype beat, all of that.
I mean, there's definitely some things I'm working on, but yeah, man, no, it's definitely a thing.
Now, take us into like the 2 films. Like, there's it took you 45 days to shoot House Party, roughly.
Well, yeah, but it was the whole thing. You know, basically it was like 30 days, something like that, and then like when there was like 10 days left, we had to recast our like number 1. Which was crazy. It was a whole thing. I mean, I can't get into it, but so basically we had to like finish the rest of the movie with the new number 1, and then go back and refilm like 15 days of like reshoots with the new actor in it, which was like a gift and a curse, because first time filmmaker, I got to like look at my footage and go back and like make things better. But then at the same time, like, you know, we would be filming like that first scene we shot, it was like a sunny day. But now when we go back 2 months later, it's like overcast, and it's just like, fuck, like, you know what I mean? And so I think that was, you know, the journey filming that film. It was just a lot, and like every lesson that was possible to be learned, like I learned it the hard way. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, after 40 days, I got 40 days of lessons that I can apply to my next film, which is White Man Can't Jump. And, you know, I immediately, even though it's like my second film, I feel like it's like really like 1.5 or something like that, for sure. What
were the 2 things you felt like you learned that stuck out specifically between those 2 projects?
I think there are two different movies and 2 different tones. But I think ultimately, like, how important prep is. You know what I mean? I think, you know, there's like a 6 to 8 week period before you start filming where you have to get everything in a row, and sometimes you feel like you got everything covered, but then when you get on set, you're like, oh shit, like we could have, you know, figured that out in post, but now we're like figuring it out in real time and the sun is going down. And I think, you know, going into White Man Can't Jump, there was a lot more prep, a lot more conversations, constant conversations with my DP and my production designer on just how to make it the best film possible. And even still, you know, things, you know, get messed up in the process.
Yeah, you can't control everything.
Yeah, but it felt easier to navigate those because the conversation is ongoing. But yeah, and it's just I just can't wait to just do my own shit. Man, I don't know. I feel like that's not the answer to that question, but like that's the energy. It's just
it sounds like your energy is very much future facing. Like you're really ready to put like your everything into like the details of, you know, coming up with the storyline, and then also like how you gonna bring it to life, like really on your Spike Lee.
No, for real, man, and be even more selfish. You know, when it comes to the story, you know what I'm saying, and I think that's the sweet spot for sure.
When you think about stories that you want to tell from your perspective, what's important to you? Like, especially with like where we are in society now, how you were raised, you know, what's important to you?
Man, I think for me, it kind of goes back to me being selfish and like putting certain streets and certain people in my film. There's no better feeling I get when I see someone that sees themselves reflected on screen. You know what I mean? And that's what I strive to do with the stories that I want to tell, that are personal stories to me. You know, stories about my family, stories about, you know, a group of people that I know, or a type of group of people that I know, where I want to create something that they can look and be like, that's me, that's our story, and it's on this huge screen that the world can, you know, digest. And I think, you know, that's the goal for me, is to make sure, you know, that my mom, like I have a story that I want to tell. Like hopefully it's my next movie. It's about my mom.
Wow.
And my biggest goal is to see her, you know, watch the movie and enjoy it. Like that's all I care about.
Yeah.
I don't care about what the Rotten Tomato score is. I don't care about what they say on Twitter.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? What matters to me is that my mom sees it and she enjoys it.
She enjoys it. Bro, I can relate so much. We went out to New Orleans last year for a recording, and you know, it's always like when you're trying to tell your parents what you do, and it's different. You know, my parents were chemical plant workers, and so the literal sense of like, they know that type of labor. They understand that this world of creative and entertainment and filmmaking, they're like, I see the output, but what do you do? You know, what do you do?
Yeah, what is your actual job?
And my mom was able to come see the recording, and she actually brought all of her sisters. She's got, you know, 5 sisters, and then a bunch of my cousins and family got to come. And it's her first time able to see it. And I felt like you was like, it wasn't about how many downloads. It wasn't about if it got picked up in PR. It wasn't about who reshared it. It was literally like, my mom knows what I do, and she's proud of me. Like, you know, it's just small stuff.
I mean, even in White Man Can't Jump, like, one of my cousins that I grew up with, he's like a writer and a stage actor. He's done all kinds of plays all over the nation, but he's never been in the film. And we grew up with him. You know what I'm saying? His mom is like my auntie, and I put him in White Man Can't Jump. He had a small role, but like, I did that because I couldn't wait for the feeling of like seeing his mom in the theater with my mom watching their sons on the big screen. You know what I'm saying? And so like, that's what it's about, man.
That's we got to get away from like looking at these stats and things like that for these validation. It's not about that. Like, it's truly about like your family, who you're trying to help feel seen, who you're trying to help feel heard, right? Like, because there's so many people going through things. Speaking of like the intentionality, like you're very intentional with your stories and making them personal. We're big fans of Atlanta, and from the writing to direction, all of those things. And you know, on your project on House Party, you were able to work with Stephen Glover. What was that like?
Yeah, man, shout out to Steve and Jamal. They co-wrote House Party. And I think the interesting thing about their style, I mean, I think their style is like, they trailblaze like this the tone of comedy that we digest in this era is like because of them, like the awkward, you know what I mean? Like the leaning into that awkwardness and how uncomfortable that feels, and like, but also that's funny, you know what I mean? And I think that's what they did with the script. But I think on another note though, I think it's really interesting, just thinking about like comedies, modern day comedies, but also like the modern comedy consumer, right? Just like, you know, just like the average moviegoer who wants to see a comedy. There's a lack of comedies in general, right? Like, when's the last time you've seen like a funny movie?
No, yeah,
like,
seriously.
There's no Nutty
lot.
Professors. There's no, you know what I mean? They don't exist anymore. And I think the interesting thing is, I think the audience isn't, what's the word? Like, they aren't, they're not used to like ingesting comedy, right? Like, when you think about like like who's the funniest person that you know like in entertainment right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Well, I think it's like, I think the funniest person is probably somebody that's on Instagram. right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Like
you know
you're watching, and you don't even know a lot of who these people are.
Exactly.
You just kind of see random, it's kind of nameless
Fly,
characters.
Ha Davis.
Yeah.
These people, and it's like Country Wayne, whatever. Like those are the comedians of our time, and we look at that as like that's how we ingest comedy. You know what I'm saying? And so like we haven't found like there's like this weird missing piece to like how we like there hasn't been a film that's reflected that tone of comedy or even a TV show in a while. So I don't know. It's one of those things I'm still trying to figure out the words to articulate, but I feel like there's like a gap, between like how we consume every day versus like what how we're used to consuming,
previously back
traditional
in
comedy.
Yeah, just stand up or like,
it's just not. I think like there's like we have to kind of recondition the audience to like know what's funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you make a great point. Like culturally, we have shifted, but also taste levels have shifted too.
Exactly. Right. It's because even like Atlanta, like I love Atlanta. I think it's one of the best shows of all time. It's like top 5 shows, like next to Martin and all that shit. But not everyone watches Atlanta, or not everyone thinks that Atlanta is funny. And so it's like, why not? Like,
it's like, why you don't get this context?
So,
like it's fire.
So it's like this weird gap where I feel like, a show like Martin, everyone loved.
Yeah.
But that's because there was no other competitors. It was
there
just
was
Martin.
nothing to compare to.
There's
it was,
it
was minimal. Like literally, it was a time where you knew 5 like black shows.
Yeah.
Right. Like and so those were all distinctly different.
Exactly.
Like they were not similar at all. And now we're in a time where maybe I think it's just that we're not as appreciative of comedy as we were because we have an abundance of things that are quote unquote funny.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And that's a bit subjective.
And that's the thing too, right? And it's funny because even when I put out House Party, like you see some of the reviews and they would say like, man, it's all these Instagram comedians in the movie. And I'm just like, yeah. Well, first of all, I guarantee you follow some of them because you think they're funny. And then 2, like, yes, this is what the comedians of our time have resorted to because there's not that many opportunities on the big screen.
Yeah.
And so it's not like there's this whole league of comedian actors that aren't on Instagram that we're ignoring.
Yeah.
DC Young Fly is one of the funniest comedians actors of all time. He should be in the movie. He should be where Martin was back in the day. So I don't know. I think that's kind of the challenge, is just trying to find that, connect that bridge between like how we how we consume comedy now versus like how we used to consume it back in the day, because it doesn't really mesh all the way well.
It doesn't link up like that. I mean, and even to your point, even when our parents were our age, how they consumed comedy was through stand-ups, was through sitcoms, and then was through major films like Eddie Murphy's Journey. You know, that's what we knew. Now that journey isn't quite there, and they're leveraging TikTok, they're leveraging Instagram as their sitcom, as their stand-up,
and we're there.
That's how we're getting to it now.
We love it, and we like it.
Yeah,
we subscribe.
So with the success, right, of, or maybe do you even define it as success when you think about like, being a director and working on these big films? Because you talked a lot about how you're like, I've done these things, but like it's not like I haven't like. Nothing much has necessarily changed in that regard. How do you define kind of what's taking shape in your life?
Well, I think it's definitely success, but I don't think it's like in a traditional sense of like, money and cars and whatever. It's just like, as an artist, success is just to like finish an art piece, you know what I mean, and like and deliver it to the audience. Yeah. Like, and in that case, like it's definitely successful. Like, that's the only way I can define it. Like, I don't want to add any more qualifiers to that. Yeah. In my mind, it's extremely successful. Yeah. Because I feel like, once again, the threshold, if it was the #1 movie in America, versus like you get a couple of positive reviews on Twitter, like it's not that much different. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
because there's also the perspective of like, well, you could not have it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Do you ever think, like, does imposter syndrome or any of survivor's remorse, does any of that stuff ever creep into your head?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, imposter syndrome. I mean, I see a therapist who specializes in imposter syndrome.
That.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where, you don't realize, like, you just don't really understand how things just happen to fall into place. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I was able to like direct Old Town Road and like and win a Grammy and an MTV. It's like I didn't try to do this. Like
you weren't trying to set it up.
How did this happen to me? Like why me? You know what I mean? And I think, you know, cause like I don't like to say, like, it's funny being in the advertising world as well. Like, for example, I won like Ad Week Director of the Year in 2020, right? Which is like a big, like I beat Spike Jonze. Like that was crazy, massive. Right? That's big, right? But it kind of feels like I'm the only black director, right? And I was like, the fact that I don't know if there's any other black directors out there, it means that there's a problem. And when you're in that situation, you kind of feel like you're one in a million. Yeah. But the reality is like I've realized that I'm one of a million. Like I know a million other people that are just creative as me, that deserve this opportunity as me, that have done the research, that know the references, that blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And so it's like that's why I struggle with imposter syndrome, because I'm like, I know I'm not the only one, but I feel like the only one.
Yeah, because you're like, why aren't more of us getting these opportunities?
Why aren't more of us? Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, and so I think that's probably like what plays a big role in it. And, you know, even like speaking, like over the years, like I've learned to like articulate myself and like, you know, and have these thoughts that I can, you know, speak to, but, you know, I still don't feel like I'm well spoken enough, or like I can articulate myself in the right way, or like, you know, when I hear, you know, other people talking conversations, they just sound so on it and so smart and cultured, and I'm just like, you know, stuttering over my words and not really like having complete thoughts. Like that fucks with me sometimes, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's like the things that I deal with, you know, even as a director, when I'm communicating with my crew, sometimes I'm like trying to say something, but I don't know the words to get it there, across. Yeah. But going back to my philosophy, I realized that if I can have those thoughts and get this far in my career, then obviously those things weren't that big of a deal, which goes back to it don't matter. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
It don't matter.
Like it don't matter. And I think like it's funny, like for example in film, right, when there's a joke that like, so when you're moving a camera, right, like when you're moving it up and down, that's like boom up, boom down. Okay. When you're moving it to the side, that's pan, right? Like you're holding the pan, pan left, pan right, right? But like a lot of like, you know, a lot of people say like, oh yeah, pan up or pan down. And it's like, you know, depending on what kind of DP you are, you're like, it's actually boom down. And I'm like, yo, you know what I meant. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's kind of the philosophy I have. I work with people that I have a second, you know, secondhand like jargon with, that I can just like get these points across without having to be technically correct about it.
I think that's important to mention, because sometimes I think it can be like very overwhelming sometimes to not know the lingo, right? That would happen when I worked in corporate offices, right? Where I know, like when I came into the industry, to sneaker industry, I came in through social media. Yeah. And I didn't know the lingo around like technical marketing. Yeah. But you couldn't mess with me when it came to like what I could do on Instagram. Like I literally came in the door and we went 3,000, 8,000 followers in a year, no budget. Yeah. Like you couldn't mess with me. Yeah. But I didn't necessarily know how to articulate strategy or like FPIs problem statement blah, 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 or RFP. I'm like, what the hell does this mean? You know, and so it would make me feel like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, or maybe like I'm not at the level that I think I am.
Bro. I mean, I get that shit all the time, man. And it's like, and I think it kind of goes back to that being selfish thing, right? Like I've seen interviews with Spike Lee, John Singleton, Ryan Coogler, you know what I'm saying, where they're just talking straight talk and like and saying it how they say it, and people understand it. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I'm not speaking English. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm talking about, and it's kind of on you to figure out what I'm talking about versus me figuring out how to like translate it to you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, that's once again what I'm trying to do, is like be more selfish, be more me, say it how I would say it, and you know, we can all come to a better understanding, and hopefully the filmmakers that I work with know what I'm trying to get across through that conversation.
Tell me how you deal with people critiquing you or saying that you're not using the right language or jargon when you're on these sets, in these pockets. Like, how do you deal with that? How does that impact you?
I mean, it's not really something like that happens frequently, but I think for me it's just about not hiring that person again. You know, there's so many filmmakers and collaborators that come from where I come from that are more than capable of doing the job. And I think that's what's important to me, is like to find people that understand my language, understand, you know, the small nuances of the culture that, you know, we can translate to the film side. Like there was an interview, I think Arthur Jaffa, and he was talking about, you know, him being the DP and like how he was talking to the cameraman about how he wanted the camera to move like a Michael Jordan dunk. And it's like, you don't know what the fuck that is, you know what I'm saying? But like, it makes sense if you know what that is, you know what I mean?
What that is.
Or, you know, I use an example of like, I want the camera to move like Iverson when he crossed Jordan over, right? So I don't know what that is, but it's like a certain pause and hesitation and like you know, whatever. And I think that's like the closer you can get to having those conversations with the collaborators, then I think you get closer to what you really want, but also like it makes the experience fun and you know, just wholesome, you know.
I mean, I love like being on a set and imagine you using that reference. It's like, yo, this just makes it much more of an enjoyable experience, because I could get the reference. Like when you were saying, I was like, yo, I wonder what it looks like with the camera.
Yeah,
like
and it may just be like a simple boom, but like that's how we got to that simple boom. And I think another thing, like as an artist, I'm someone that's way more visual than I don't know what's the opposite of visual. See,
you're not taking it in through audible, right?
Yeah, I don't talk a lot when I'm on set, but like you know, I think I was working with this actor Sinqua who's in White Man Can't Jump, and he was like, you know, doing an interview about me, and he said something. I was like, damn, that's exactly who I am. He was like, you know, instead of me telling you something as a director, I like to show you something, right? And so I'll find these like different parallels that, you know, it may not be like, as a director, I'm not someone that comes in and gives you a note and gives you every cue to hit and say, stand here, say this, do this. Yeah. I'm more like, yo, you remember that one time where Kanye, you know, went on stage with Taylor Swift? Like, give me that energy. Give me that. And it's like a cultural reference that we all know, and you know what that feels like.
You know that energy,
and I think
sure.
like that's, you know, that's my secret weapon is like knowing and having references that I feel like we all can relate to get certain performances out.
Your digital journal must be ridiculous.
Oh man, my reference, I got too many references, man. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you can't keep them, man. It's crazy, but it's dope to hear them coming through. And it's funny when you talk about you're a visual person. It reminded me of my aunt. She always said, I can show you better, I can tell you.
I can show you better than I can tell you, man. And I think that's part of the journey as a filmmaker, is because, you know, when I started out doing this, I didn't expect me to be giving notes to like these actors and telling them how to perform. I was just like, let me get a camera, let me figure out how to light it, let me color correct it, let me do all the visual stuff. And so, you know, this process of being a director and having to like, you know, articulate these certain emotions that I want these, you know, characters to perform, it's a challenge for me, you know what I'm saying? But I'm getting better every time, and you know what I'm saying, hopefully, you know, after my 4th or 5th film, you know, I'll be able to give a class on how to talk to actors, but you know, it's something that I'm working on each time.
Working on. It just comes with it, right? Man, so does anything ever keep you up at night when it comes to your work?
Man, phew. That's a crazy question, man. Keep me up at night. I mean, I think for me, like, obviously I've been able to get off certain things through my career, and like that fulfill me as an artist. But I still feel like I'm chasing this like one thing, and I don't know what that is, but I think it's like, it may not be healthy, to be honest, but I feel like it's like this one project that's 100% from my brain with all the people that I love, that gets the praise from the people that I want to get the praise from. It's just like this dream like outcome, right? And I think that's kind of what keeps me up at night. But, you know, I eventually go to sleep. Right? And I think that's kind of like the reality of it, is like there's always something, there's always more, there's always something bigger and better that you know, I feel like I should be striving for, but I often, you know, realize that I'm okay where I'm at now. And if I just stay on this path, I will eventually or not get to this place that I think that I want to go. Right. You know what I'm saying? But it's all assumptions. It's all opinions. It's all, you know, dreams, so to speak. And so, Yeah, there's a lot that keeps me up at night, but I try to suppress those things as much as possible.
I love what you said. You said eventually I go to sleep.
Yeah, eventually I go to sleep and I forget about it until a couple months later, or whatever.
And
but
it pops back up.
But it definitely happens though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Man, well, I know you got a lot more to come in your career, but you've seen so much already. I'd be curious to know if you had any thoughts or any guidance for some of the up and comers that want to be directing their own films and want to be directing commercials. What advice would you have for young creators of color that are trying to figure out their way into this career path?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many little detailed lessons or whatever advice I could give to people, but I feel like ultimately it's like just start. Just do the thing that you want to do or you think you want to do. Let me start over after this.
Bro, I went over it twice.
You good?
And they're like, yeah, we'll keep it. It don't matter.
Is it good? Is it good? I don't know. If it's not good, I'll stop. Is it good audio wise? Okay. Go ahead and give me it again.
So tell me about, when you think about your career, you've seen a lot already, like from directing music videos to producing to directing films now. What advice would you have for these young up-and-comers that are coming up that aspire to be, doing what you're doing, specifically for creators of color? How would you advise them to navigate it?
Man, I think as a creator, as a young creator, we see all these people doing the thing that we want to do, and we see their tools and we see their destination, but we don't really see the journey. And I think, we think the journey has to look a certain way. We think we need these certain tools and these certain cameras and computers to live that dream out. But I think, my advice would be to you're already who you think you want to be later on right now. Like all the ideas that are going to make you $1 million or make you the biggest director, you have them inside of you right now. And the job is to just get those ideas out. The more ideas you get out, the faster you can get to that goal. But the more you suppress those ideas and try to save them for this special moment, then that's just going to slow down the process. You might get there eventually, but it's going to take way more time than if you just get it out now. Like those ideas, the references, all that stuff is in you. And the more you get out, the more you make space for new energy and new references to come in and get you to that destination faster. So the goal is to just get it out. Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Man, brother, thank you so much for sitting with us.
No, thank you, man.
That was a fantastic sign off. Don't wait. Just go. Because all that stuff sits in there. Again, you're just slowing yourself down.
You're slowing it down, man.
You can't evolve if you're not releasing it.
Exactly.
So, man, I appreciate you, fam.
Nah, thank you, man. Appreciate you, man.